revise the materials, whenever you need. Um, so to kick it off, I'll ask Silver,
Sir, sir,
Hiwari.
sir,
Go ahead.
sir, can we have the recording daily?
Yes, we will provide a recording for all the courses. So I will send it to you guys at the end of the
Okay, sir.
each of those
Also,
class. Yeah.
the group in the group channel, we always post it there for you all to see.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. So I encourage you guys to be on mute so that we can all hear clearly and as we go into the course proper. So with that, I would open up to Silver to kick it off, and we can get started.
Thank you, Michael. This is great. I'm super excited right now. I don't know. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Yes, madam. Yes,
Okay,
madam.
let me put my video on. I don't know if it's going to be very clear though, but yeah. So thank you all for joining our 4 weeks Python program. Course. I'm so excited that this is kicking off at last. This course was brought to you free but courtesy of IT Experience, and IT Experience is a non-profit organization based in the US. Our mission is to provide a platform where anyone interested in career in the technology and IT industry can gain experience, network, and build skills that will help them land their dream job or give them the confidence to freelance. So this course is one out of the series of the tech courses we'll be providing on our platform, and we'll be sending out invite for future courses as they become available. So we ask that you all participate actively during this course, perform the exercises and the project. We'll also be giving out certificate of completion for all those that successfully complete the course and project. And most importantly, I would like to use this opportunity to also thank the instructors, Vishal, Daz, and Michael Ehiwario. You guys are awesome. You guys rock. I mean, I don't know how to express my appreciation more than this, really. Thank you so much for making out time out of your busy, very busy schedule, I know, to bring this event to life. I appreciate and I thank you so much. And thank you. Also, let's just lastly, I also want to thank the sponsors of this program: Microsoft, Google, Twilio, and GitHub. Thank you all for joining. I look forward to more collaboration and more active participation to encourage instructors. Thank you very much. I'll pass it over to Michael to tell us more about the course and all we need to know.
Thank you very much, Silver, for the introduction. I'll just go ahead and give a few of the ground rules or course rules before we start. That way we can have a fun and a good learning opportunity for everybody. So this is going to be a 4-week course. It's going to be Saturdays and Sundays. On Saturdays like this, we're going to cover course materials. And on Sunday is going to be time for discussion where we go over some of the exercises and projects and help some of the participants with questions that you may have. Or if you get stuck working on your project, is on Sundays a good place where you can actually get some of those questions answered. We have a couple of people that have also volunteers to be mentors, and they're going to be available to help you guys with some of the projects as you walk through the material. As I said, this is going to be a recorded session. We'll make the videos available after every session so that you can actually go over it while you work on your project. Okay. Before we go in proper, I kind of have a quick survey. You guys, we can actually use to gauge the experience level of participants. So I don't know if you guys have used this Menti survey before. Can you see my screen still?
Yes, sir. It's clear.
So if you can go to this link, www.menti.com, and put in this code 324835. So you can see a lot of North America bubble here.
It's okay. Daddy's gonna hear you. Don't cry.
So let's see if there's any more respondents. And so do we have everybody responded? Okay.
Some don't have the link. I don't.
So this is, if you can see my slide, the link is at the top of the slide, www.menti.com. Use the code 324835. Hi, Vishal. You have a question?
I was saying that we have around 52 odd participants. So yeah, I see around 39 have responded, and yeah, I was just going to flag that. Yeah.
Thank you. Very good.
If you will just check in the chat, I've posted the link and the code if anybody wants to click directly from there.
Thanks for doing that.
No problem.
So I'll give it one more minute on this and I'll move to the next question. So before we kick it off properly. So it's heavily North America, but I see we're kind of very distributed. Some respondent from Africa, Asia, South America, Europe, and Australia. Nobody from Antarctica yet. We'll see. All right. Yep. So I'm going to move to the next question, and we'll spend 2 minutes on that. I'll give it one more minute.
Hey, Michael, I see Krishna has his hand raised.
Hi, Krishna. You have a question?
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I am 15 years old guy. and I want to learn programming. And I learned the basics of web development, and I don't know what path should I take. Can I get some guidance from you?
Yeah. Yeah, so tomorrow during the discussion, I would definitely be helping with some of those questions. So make sure you try to call in tomorrow as well, same time, and we'll cover some of those, provide some guidance, as you navigate the tech journey. So definitely we'll be able to provide guidance in that space.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, so I think this is very good. We have most of the respondent already. And this is just for us to be able to gauge the skill level and make sure that we cater the course to, to the participants. I see that we have a handful without any prior knowledge and some people with some basic knowledge and a few intermediate and advanced. So we're going to tailor the course accordingly. And this course is going to be mostly for beginner and intermediate level, and we'll try to cover some of the material, go slow if we can to make sure that we carry everybody along. So stay with us. And if there are concepts that you, as a beginner, that you don't get during the course, the next day, which is Sunday's time where we actually can help you continue to grow in that journey. So don't feel intimidated. Just follow along the course. We have a great instructor, Vishal. He's a great guy, and I think he's going to do very well, helping to convey the course material and also the exercise and example. So without wasting much time, Vishal, I would hand over to you to do a quick introduction of yourself before we kick off with before you kick off with the course proper. So let me
Sure.
stop sharing.
Yeah. Hi everyone. It's so good to see all of you guys from all around the world. I hope I'm coming in clear with my audio.
Yeah.
Can anybody give me a check? Okay, all right, perfect. So, yeah, my name is Vishal Das. I would be, taking some of the course material forward and giving you the instructions. So my background is I'm currently working as a geophysicist in Shell in Houston in the US. And I do have a PhD from Stanford University, and I was working in a lot of data science driven problems, and that's where I picked up Python heavily and was doing some of these programming. Yeah, so apart from that, I do enjoy teaching, and that's why this brings me here, right? So I mean, I want to learn as much from you guys as much as I'd like to share what I know. So yeah, looking forward to next 4 weeks.
Thank you, Vishal.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you.
So Vishal, you want to go ahead and share from your end?
Yep, I can do that. All right.
So I encourage you guys to go on mute. If you have a question, you can use the hand to signify your question, and you can also ask it in the chat window. That way we can actually have very good audio for everyone.
Yep. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. So let's kick it off. Thank you, Michael, for doing the Menti survey. I have, I think it was important for us to gauge what the audience we were looking at. So since we have people without any prior knowledge as well, so I'd start right from the basic, what is Python, and so I have a request to increase the text size. Okay, let's try that. How about now? Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Yeah. No, thanks for that. Yeah. So please feel free to type in your chats as you have questions and comments, right? So yeah. So I'd start right from the basic, and this is a course on Python. Python is a programming language, as you guys possibly know. It's very high level and interpreted and general purpose programming language. So it's not like the earlier versions of programming languages where you need to do a lot of like non-interpretative kind of programming. This is more interpreter driven programming, and it was created by a Dutch computer programmer named Guido van Rossum, and it was first released in 1991. So it's a very interesting story actually with Guido, and he just recently retired from the board in Python last year, but he actually started this whole project as a Christmas break program. He didn't know what to do in the Christmas of, I think it was in the 80s, and he thought that let's start writing something that is used as a general purpose programming language, and that's where all of the Python and the open source package came into practice. So it's an open source package, so no paid stuffs with this. This is where the whole programming community and the computer science community is going towards open source, trying to share codes, trying to make it usable for everybody. So it's based on that same philosophy, and it has got an object-oriented programming approach to it, so it helps to write very clear and logical code, and we will see that as we go through the different projects and the exercises. So um, I'd highly encourage you guys to look at this website, python.org. That's the main website for Python, and you can do different downloads of different packages and install them. You can look at the community and read some of the stories behind them, and also get to know what are the latest releases that's happening. So for example, right now Python just released 3.9.0. That's the latest release. And yeah, so this is a great resource. I'd highly encourage you guys to go and spend some time in here. um, another powerful example that I wanted to start this class with. So I think most of you guys have used YouTube, Google, Instagram, and some of you might also be into Reddit, Spotify, Dropbox, and Quora. So all these have components of them written in Python. So the YouTube video streaming that you're looking at, the latest features, some of the features which came in very very recently, like previews and stuffs like that, they were all written in Python. So it's a very popular language. And as a survey in 2020, I think over the last at least few years right now, Python has been voted continuously as one of the top 10 programming languages in the world. I think in 2020 it's got its position in the first three, and it has retained that since 2019 as well. And coincidentally, Guido was actually part of Dropbox. He retired, I think, last year, so he was working as part of Dropbox as well. But this was kind of his brainchild to develop Python. All right, so now that you guys know a brief about Python, how do we actually use Python, and how do we actually start coding? So this is where IDEs, or integrated development environments, come into place. So these are in layman terms, these are installers or software packages that help you to program in the programming language that Python has. There are a bunch of them. There is Anaconda, which is a very popular one. This is the website for Anaconda, and they have different versions: Miniconda, the full Conda version, and stuff like that. That helps you to program in Python. Another very useful tool which actually inspires a lot of new tools as well is the Jupyter Notebook. This comes in with the Anaconda full package, so it's a web application. So you almost use a web browser and start writing code using that, and it uses your local computer resources to write the codes and also share the codes between different people. So Jupyter actually came up with a newer software package called Jupyter Lab, which is even an advanced version of Jupyter Notebook. But yeah, Jupyter Notebook is still there and remains one of the powerful IDEs. The third one is Google Colab, and this is what we are going to use in our course. So essentially, this is coming from Google. As you can see, it is inspired by Jupyter Notebook. So this particular presentation or whatever I'm sharing right now in my screen is actually a Google Colab notebook. So I'm using a virtual machine that's somewhere in the world that Google is hosting for us. And it has got all the essential packages, especially the Python packages that's useful and that's used by most people. And we can start using the Google's virtual machine. So it doesn't really depend on what kind of a computer you have. As long as you have a good enough internet connection, you can use Google's resources to actually run your Python codes. And this is what we are going to use. There are others as well, like PyCharm, Spider, PyDev, and others. You can Google for the IDEs for Python, and you will find a long list there. It's good to keep them in your radar. Maybe one of them suits your needs better than others, but for this particular course, we will be using Google Colab. And in fact, at this point, I actually would like all of you guys to go into a website called collab.research.google.com. And I'm going to try and paste that in the chat window as well. Right, so collab.research.google.com. Let's go into that website. You will see a list coming up, something like this. It might be empty for you guys if it is something that you haven't used before. But you will see some version of this, right? It might not be exactly the same, but a version of this. So once you get there, I'd like you to look at the examples tab right at the top. So these are some of the Google Colab research projects. So it's a research project that started by Google, and they want to make push this forward. So they have provided some example notebooks which you can open. Just clicking them would open it. So for example, if I click on overview of collaboratory features, you will see a notebook that opens, and it actually gives you a pretty comprehensive introduction to the collaboratory features, so which is essentially writing Python codes and stuffs like that. So you see there is a part here where it says working with Python, right? So you can always go in and check that at your leisure. Let me go back to the collab.research.google.com. The tab where you have recent, you might not see all of them. It just is based on what you guys have clicked before. Right. So yeah, I see somebody commenting that you use Visual Studio Code. It's really a good one actually, especially if you're not just a Python programmer, but also using other languages like C, C Sharp, C++. It's a really neat one. I like it as well. So yeah, that's also an IDE, I would say. All right. So once you have this, I hope you guys all have it. I'd like all you guys to click New Notebook. So once you have new notebook, you would be taken up to a blank notebook, something similar to this. This should be similar for all you guys, right? So I want all of you to get to this part, and then at the top, instead of untitled 0, erase that and say day 1 course, Python course. So this is the name of the notebook that we are giving for today, and we will it's a very hands-on course, so you guys will all follow along as I go through this through this hour or a couple of hours. So we would together code, and we would together use Google's collaboratory and Google's machine to actually code everything. So once you have this renamed, I would like all of you to go into File and locate in Drive. So what it is doing is essentially it's looking at your Google Drive and it is giving you the location of the notebook. So tomorrow when you come back and if you want to discuss certain things from this day one, a Python code, Jupyter or Google Collaboratory notebook, you will have to just go into your Google Drive, go into this folder called Collab Notebooks, right click on this particular file that you created. That's the scripting that you're doing in this particular notebook, and open it with Google Collaboratory. So what it'll do is it'll open this notebook till the point you have saved it, right? So the saving is simple. It's Control S, the normal Windows uh, way of saving notebooks. If you're using a Mac, it would be the Mac symbol and S, or you could just say File and Save, right? So that would be another way of doing it. All right, so I have a chat which says, can you repeat, please? Which part of it is not clear? If you can come off mute and give me a quick shout.
I am lost it. I think you can begin, please.
No, but this might be helpful for others as well. So which part of it did you not, this is pretty basic. I can go over it again. So I went into
Okay.
collab.research.google.com, this particular
Yes.
website. I clicked
Okay.
enter, right? So I went into this particular, display, and then I clicked new notebook. So
Yeah.
it came up as a new notebook in here. What I did was I renamed it into Python course or something of that sort based on whatever name you want to put. I put this, for example, and that's it. And then clicked or pressed on your keyboard Control and S. So that's basically saving it. I also showed where you can locate it in your drive using the File Locate in Drive option. So I hope all of you have this notebook open in front of you, because if you don't have this, you will lose me right at the start, and I don't want you to lose me at this point. So if if you guys do not have it, perfect. Yeah, I like the interactions in here. So yes, you can add it to your bookmark items as well. Right. So anybody who doesn't have this might be a good point to stop me.
Sure, there's a question if Google Colab do automatic save. I think it also does auto save, correct?
It does, but just to make sure that if you are at a critical junction in your coding where you have done a lot of coding, it's always a good
Good.
habit to just press Control S and not rely
Agree.
on its autosave version.
I agree. That's good. Looks like we're
Right.
getting a lot of positive and people are up to
Yep.
speed.
All right. So sounds good. So this is a good point to come back to the notebook that I was discussing with you. So we'll now go straight into programming. So the power of Google Colab is that you didn't have to install anything. It comes pre-installed. It's a virtual machine that has, a very powerful, system hardware that you can directly use. And on top of that, Python is already installed in it, right? So we'll go straight into the first major topic that we want to cover. So what are the different data types in Python, right? Um, so we have three distinct data type categories in Python. We have numbers, which can be integer and floating points. So integer is anything that is a whole number, right? And floating point is something with decimals. We have another big category, which is the strings. So any alphanumeric, variable or data type is actually a string. So it can be a combination of just letters, white space, or letters and numbers altogether. They would be all combined under strings. And the third category are booleans. So boolean is something like a true and false. And we will try to cover this using some of the numbers, the math operations, and stuffs like that. All right, so we will start going into some of these details. So the first thing that we'll try to do is to do some simple math operation in our notebook. So in Python, this is one thing that you need to start taking notes about. So if you start any line in a code with yeah, so we will be learning scikit-learn and TensorFlow, a little bit of it in week 4 as we go through the material. So you can look at the agenda; it's on the website. I think we have mentioned it there. All right. So any line in the code, if it starts with a hash, it's a comment line. So it is not executed. So you can put in your comments, comment about, the date. So let's say today's date is November 7, 2020. You can put in any other stuff like this is my first line of code in Google Colab using Python. So you can put in your comments in there, and this is a great way to to have that as a habit. Like if you guys are not full-time programmers, I would highly encourage you to do this as you embark on your journey as a programmer, because you would know that, and you would realize that as you become a programmer and as you start writing tens and thousands of lines of code, you will start forgetting a lot of important details. So it's very, very good to actually capture everything in the comments, right? And another important thing that I wanted to mention, because we're using Google Colab, so there are two different types of cells that you can enter. So what is a cell? A cell is something like this that we are writing our stuffs in. So there are two categories of this. So one is to a code and another one is a text. So previously, what you were looking at in my in the text that I had was using a text cell. So you can write in your text. It can be an HTML format and any other markdown language format. You can also use stuffs like uh, mathematical expressions, and all of those can be incorporated into the text. And this particular cell is actually a code. So the distinction is that you would see that in the coding cell you will have all these options of running the cell, and it look much different than a text. So a text cell looks something like this with all the text editor options, right? So yeah, and once you insert a text, you can click any of these and insert text, and you can also delete them. It's pretty intuitive in its own way. So I'll delete this. All right, so let's write our first simple math operation. So let's do a simple, uh, you know, um, addition of two numbers. So let's say we are trying to add 2 and 3 together, right? So we are already in. So Google Colab by itself uses Python. So the way to run this cell is to, click on this particular play option. So once you click this play option, it is connecting you to that machine that is there somewhere. So you can see that it has actually found a machine for you with a pretty good RAM. It's a 12 gigs of RAM and some disk space for you, depending on where you're writing your code. So it's actually dependent on the Google Drive that you're using. And you can also yeah, you can also get a GPU out of it. So I have a question here. Are you in text or code? I'm in code. So you can insert a code in here, and you can write 2 plus 3 and then press this play button in here. So another question is, do you need a print statement or not when you want to print it? So good question. Let's see. So I have the first addition. So let me put a comment in here. First addition of two numbers, right? So that was my, so another shortcut of running a code is code cell is control and enter. Okay. Yeah. So now the question was, do you need a print statement or not? Let's see. So let's do another, mathematical operation. Let's say we try to do something like this. We have 30 minus 4 times 4, and we again run the cell. So what happens is that it only outputs the last particular output, right? It didn't output 3 plus 2 in here. So this is where you would need print statements, right? So if you want to output both of these, so instead of just writing it like that, what you would do is, I'll move on to another cell. You would write print, open parenthesis, and you can see that once you write this, it actually gives you some help about what can be written, what it what it requires as an input and whatnot. So you can actually put 2 plus 3 inside your print statement. It will print 5 like it was doing before, and you can also print the second line. So now we would get both the lines, both the answers, right? So we'll get 5 and 14. All right, so that was one. So these are all, categories of integer and numbers data type. Now remember, in numbers we had another data type called floating point. So if you do, let's say, 8 divided by 5, so division sign is the same as we use. So this particular thing, 1.6, is actually a floating point. So now you can ask me that is there a way to actually find out what kind of data type you're looking at? So to do that, you can actually type the command type, and then you can say, okay, I want to see what my 8 divided by 5 is as a data type. So it would tell you that it's a floating, right? So, and again, you can put a comment here. Type command helps finding out about the data type, right? So this is one. Let's see, what about this guy? So I'll say type and this, and now this is an integer. Again, all of these can be written inside a print statement. So remember, I'm the fundamental difference about print statement. It helps you print multiple lines. Wherever you have a print, it will give you an output. So you can actually output these things as well. So it's telling you the first output is this, the second output is this, and the third output is actually the type of the variable, right? Now we can get actually a little bit more sophisticated with the print statement. So we can now say, well, we need some more information in the print statement. So some more information in the print statement, right? So let's say instead of just saying 2 plus 3, we would rather like it to actually give us some more information about it. So let's say we wanted to, say the sum of 2 and 3 is equal to. So the way I'm doing this is, if you want to print any string, so this is actually a string. So this part that I've highlighted, so that's a string. You open inverted commas on there. So you put your string in here, and after that, when you have to, output a particular operation, you put a comma after the string, and then you put that operation. So let's see if this works or not. So yes, so what it did was it printed out the sum of 2 and 3 is 5. So I have it actually at 250% zoom. I see somebody's has said the screen resolution looks a bit small. Is this something that other people are also facing, or is this might be something very specific to you?
Your screen is okay.
Okay, good. Thank
Looks
you.
okay here.
So I have another question here. So difference between single quotes and double quotes. So let's try it, right? So this is how we would learn, and this is the best way to learn programming. So you have a question. What you do is first you try it here. Yeah, so you change this into a single quote. Does it work? Yes, it does. So it doesn't care whether you are using a single quote or a double quote, but it's always good to, stick with one particular format, right? Because right now we are starting it pretty basic, but we would eventually you would see that, we will write long list of lines of codes, and you might want to actually have them in a correct format. Yeah. All right. So now let's go into something more fun, right? So far I hope it is interesting enough and people are following what I'm saying. So previously when we did all of these operations like 2 plus 3, 30 minus 4 times 4, and all of this, these were not stored anywhere. So in programming, we would always like to store our outputs and use it for some other operations, right? So that's where it, yeah, so that's where, we will go into assignments of variables, right? So assignment of variables. All right, so let's see, let's say we still want to do this addition. So addition of two numbers, but instead of putting it, like 2 plus 3, we would say our first input 1 is 2, and our second input 2 is 3. And now we would like to, use a variable that actually stores the sum of input 1 and input 2. So input 1 plus input 2. Okay, so that's the result variable actually stores the sum of input 1 and input 2. And now we will actually go into, some more sophisticated print statement. So we will say that the sum of, comma, the variable input 1, comma, and, comma, input 2, comma, with more inverted comma, is, comma, the result. Right? So here we have not just used one particular string and the output, we are using multiple strings and multiple variables in here. So you can see this first part is a string, then there is this variable, the second part is another string, and then there is the variable input 2, and then the third part has another string, right? So the print statement can go very, very powerful. You can put in a lot of information in this. So once you have this, we will run the cell, and now you can see the sum of input 1, which is actually 2, input 2, which is actually 3, is the result, which is 5. And the power of this is that you can change your inputs, but you do not have to change anything with the operations, right? So you can, instead of doing 2 plus 3, now I can easily make it 4 plus 3, right? So it will just do what you had told it to do.
Yeah,
Now,
and Vishal, I think it will be good at this point to see if everybody has followed up to this point, especially for the beginners. So I don't want to lose them.
yeah, agreed. So
So
guys,
let me,
come off mute if you guys have questions about anything that we have
Yes, is there particular places that you're supposed to put a space? Because you put a space after the sum of before the semicolon, and then you put a space before and after and, it looks like. And I got a tax error it said it's wrong. It's in the comments.
Okay, so there are a couple of things here. So inside the string, if you put a space or not, it doesn't really matter, right? So it would so if I remove all the spaces inside the string, right, so it will just make it a little bit more cumbersome in the display, right? So you would not have any space after the sum of and all of this. So let's see. So this is how it looks like, right? So that's why I put a space in here. Now let's see about this space, right? If we remove all the spaces here as well, it shouldn't complain actually, right? So these spaces were just to make the code aesthetically pleasing, right? So I mean, I normally would put space because, you know, I know that there is some difference in between this and this, and some difference between this and this, and the rest. But did you have an error even when you had the commas and the inverted commas in the code cell? I don't think the error is related to space.
Yeah, someone looked at the readout and said that I missed a comma. Yeah, showed up.
Yeah.
Search. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
So all you need, Marianne, so after you close before you put the 2 plus 3, you put a comma to get out of the string.
Okay.
Try it
one quick
and
question.
let us know if it
Go for it.
works.
Yeah, one quick question. In the chat, I put in there, I put two statements, which is type 10/5 and type 8/3. Am I supposed to get two results, or would I get just based on what I ran, all I got was a float?
So yeah, so when you just use the, you know, the commands, it's similar to these two commands, right? So it only outputs the last statement. So if you do not use the print before it, so instead of using type 10/5 and type 8/3, if you want to get two different outputs in the cell, you would have to use the print statement.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Sir, what if we want to use quotes in the strings? Then how can we use quotation marks?
So good question. So at this point, I think I'll tell you one big secret of all programmers. For all questions, you have to use Google, right? These kind of questions will come in all the time. So what you need to do is to type into Google, I want to use quotations in the string and say Python, right? So that's all you need to type, and let's see what it comes out with. So one big website which you would always come across with, and it's one of the biggest reason why Python is very popular today, is Stack Overflow, right? A lot of your answers will be answered already by people who have used and said the same things in the Stack Overflow. So you see, so I think this is like exactly the same question that you asked, right? When I want to do a print command in Python and I need to use quotation marks, I don't know how to do it without closing the string. Exactly the same question that you asked, right? And this is how you do it. So you escape the double quote. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, I think somebody in the chat, Steven, put it correctly. Say programmers are good Googlers. You have to, Google should be your friend when you do programming.
Exactly. Yes. And it's and you saw what I typed, right? I did this is all on the fly. We didn't, you know, we didn't expect this question, we didn't plan this question, I can tell you that. But it showed the first result that came in was actually very, very relevant, right? So you can see that people have answered it. There are 3 different ways of doing it, and you could try that at your own time and see if it works or not.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vishal. I think we can make progress now. I just
All right.
wanted to make sure we are all following. Yep.
Sounds good. Let's go into the next part now. So, all right. So we have covered, the numbers and the integers and the floating point. Let's now try some booleans, right? So I'll have a new code cell in here. I will say now we are going into Boolean type. So remember, Boolean type is something that tells you whether something is true or false, right? So remember, now we have this variable called input1, which we have assigned the value as 4. Now let's say we want to check if the value of input1 is equal to 4 or not. So the way to check this would be a Boolean. So what we would do is we would say input1, instead of 1 equal to, which is used for the assignment, we will use 2 equal to's. So if you use 2 equal to, what is that, the character, and put anything, let's say input1 equal to, let's say 5, and we know our input1 is 4, what should be the answer? The answer should be false, right? So that's what a Boolean, the Boolean actually does a comparison. So why do we need Booleans when we have string? Is because Booleans have this very important feature of doing comparisons, right? So you would find, like in strings, you can only say that, something is something. So it is not the computer that's actually doing it. It's you who is telling the computer, okay, my string is false or my string is true, or things like that. But Boolean is something different. Boolean is actually comparing stuffs, right? So we are comparing whether the variable is actually having that particular value. And I can think of multiple situations when you would need this, right? So for example, let's say you want to not just check the number, you can check the result, right? So I want to find out whether a particular result of a particular operation is, let's say, equal to some number, right? Equal to 4. So it will tell you, like, whether it's equal to 4 or not. So that's where Boolean comes into a lot of utilization. I think you can also do things like greater than equal to. You can do things like less than equal to, which becomes even more powerful, right? Because let's say you have a spreadsheet and you are trying to find out all the columns which are having values which are less than a particular threshold that you have defined. So you can use Booleans in that case as well. All right, now we'll go into something which is much more sophisticated. So we have covered the different data types. So we have covered the strings, which are these guys, the numbers, which are these guys, and also the Booleans, right? So there's a question about combination of conditions. Yes, you can do combination of conditions. You can think about, like, practically anything that you can think about can be put in as a Boolean. And that's how programmers would do it, right? If this is greater than this, and this is greater than this, and this is greater than this, or this is less than this, you can put all of that into the same, and the end result of it would be a true or a false, right? Yep, that's right. So we'll cover more of these conditions. So all right, so let me now go into something where Python has again another big advantage. So Python community is a very strong community, and there are different packages which are also called libraries that are out there. And in the beginning of the course, we had people asking about whether we would cover scikit-learn and TensorFlow. So these are different libraries, right? So let us see how we import libraries. So let's put a comment saying import libraries. And we will import the most basic library, mathematical library,
Can you back
importing.
up and explain what a library is, please?
Yes, sure. So yeah, no, my bad. Thanks for pointing that out. So libraries are essentially codes that are written by people in the community and made open source, right? So people have written different functions, different codes that you could use. So essentially what we are trying to do is we are importing what they have already, written down out in the Python community. We are importing their codes, which we call packages or libraries, and we would use their codes to do our operations or our programming. So yeah, so that's how I would put in library.
Thank you.
Yeah. So all right, so let's import basic math library, right, into Python. The the powerful part of Python is also that things are pretty intuitive. So in order to import a library, you use the import command. Essentially, you say import, and you just you know um, uh, write the name of the library. Now there's one thing here that I'd have to tell you guys. So since you guys are using Google Colab, so far we didn't have to install anything into our systems, or like do anything special with the installation. So any library that's out there, if you're using non-standard libraries, you will need to install that into your environment. So even if you're using Colab and you're using some specific library which is not installed in here, we will have to install that, and we will cover that later in the course. It's a more advanced version, but this math library is actually already in the Google's system. So we will say import math and run this cell. Okay, so now we have already imported the library. Now let's try to use some functions from this imported library, right? So we will say using functions in the imported library. So when you use the when you import the library, so let's say you have imported math, you can call the library but just by just typing that name, right, math. And if you press the so the way to do this is that you type in the name of the library and then you put a dot, right? So and once you have that, you would see all the functions that's inside that library, right? So you can do arc cosine, age, arcsine, arctan, tan age, and whatnot. So there are lots of different uh, functions inside this basic math library. So what we will do here is we will try to take the logarithm the, the logarithmic 10 of a number, right? So this is what we will use, log 10, and we will try to get it for a number, let's say 20. So and again, another good part of all of this is that once you have this, it will tell you what exactly this particular function does. Return the base 10 logarithm of x, right? So once you execute this, you would get the log 10 value of 20, right? Okay, so far so good. So let's now move into some more, strings and, defining a string and using some of the operations in string. So strings are something which are basically a sequence of characters, right? So we have seen that inside the print statement, we had strings, right? So you could have, things like, I would say this is a string. So, and there was a question about single quotation mark and double quotation mark. Both of them would give string, right? So this is a string, is a string. And again, just a reminder, how do you know what type of, what data type you have? You just use the type command and you can, put this thing in here and it'll tell you str, that's a string type, right? We could also assign strings to different variables like we did for numbers, right? So we could say test string is equal to, this is a string. Right? So that would actually, store this string into this variable. All right. So now we have the test string, which stores this variable, stores this string in here. So, and if we want to see what test string has inside it, we can just type test string, and it'll tell you this is a string. That's the output of this particular variable. All right. Now
Sir,
let's.
a small question, please, sir.
Yes.
As in JavaScript, we can declare the variables, but we cannot, without assigning the variables, we can declare the variables using where, const, or let in JavaScript. Can we do the same thing in Python?
Yes,
Just declaring the variables, but
we
not
could.
assigning any values for them.
We could, yes, and we will see that as we go into some of the NumPy exercises. I think that's week 3, right? So we will declare, and it's actually recommended to declare variables before you go inside things like a for loop and stuff like that, so that you have the memory allotment in there. So yeah, we can. The short answer to your question is yes, we can, and we will go over it in some of our later classes.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Another question, please.
Mhm.
I'm a little confused because there's too many words. The word string is repeating, so I quite don't get this concept. Is the fact that you're trying to show us that a string could be a string of words, a string of variables? It's like being printed, or I'm kind of lost on what this does because I'm such a beginner.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to understand the question, and
Is there another way to describe what you were trying to point out here? This is a string. So what does that mean? Is you could say something other than this is a string in
Yep.
the quotation marks, and it would print it out, or what's the whole purpose of this thought?
Yep. So now I think I understand the question now. So yes, essentially the idea is any alphanumeric values, you can assign it as a string. So I could just say ABCD. That's also a string, right? So what it does, it's essentially storing the alphanumeric value. So the idea behind showing you this is that strings are alphanumeric values are different data types than numbers, and as you will progress in the course, you would see that there are certain things that you can do with strings that you cannot do with numbers, or vice versa, right? So um, i I mean, if I do not declare this string as a variable and it doesn't have the type string, I mean, you cannot do certain operations. Or in the other words, if this is like, let's say we did a math.log10, right? So let's try to do that actually, math.log10 of a string. So let's see if it does something. So it's giving us a error here, right? So why it is important and why I wanted to make this clear distinction is because you need to understand what type of data you are dealing with, right? So in this case, it is giving us an error that a logarithmic 10 of a string type of variable is not defined, right? It must be a real number. So any alphanumeric variable is essentially a string. It doesn't have to be this is a string. It can be anything. It can be your name. It can be the name of the month. It can be the name of the country. Anything alphanumeric. Does that make sense?
That's much clearer. And then the words test underscore string, what does the test part do?
Okay. So again, this is an example. This doesn't have to be exactly what I have in here. It can be anything, right? So for example, I could say that my name of the variable can be string1, right? And I say this is ABCD. So then what it does, it stores this particular string in the variable name string1. So essentially test underscore string is the name of the variable. And why I used underscore is because it has to be continuous. I couldn't use in the variable name, I cannot use spaces, right? So a good way to represent a space is an underscore in here. So whatever name you give to the variable, that's how it stores it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sure, definitely. All right, so I'll move on. Okay. Into the next part where we will do some interesting and useful string operations. So let's put a comment in here, some useful string operations. Let's say we define the variable name as test and we store a string inside this variable called IT experience. Okay. So we want to know how many characters are there in this particular string. So my comment would be find the length of a string. So Python has this inbuilt function called len or length. So it returns the number of items in a container. So I'll put length of test and I'll say enter. So it gives me that there are 12 particular characters in this particular string. Okay. So these are pretty handy tools. Now I'll show you something even more fancy. So I'll try to find out if inside this particular string I have a particular character of interest. So for example, and this is where I'm combining data types, and you will see the usefulness of booleans as well in here. So let's say I want to find out if I have the alphabet A inside this string called test, right? So what I'll do is I'll use a print statement and I will say A in the single quotes, that's the string, in test. Okay, so what it is doing, it is going inside each and every character inside this particular variable test, which has the value IT experience, and it is trying to do a Boolean comparison. So somebody asked me that, can you do multiple operations of Boolean inside one statement? This is exactly what it is doing. The in statement actually does it for you. So it is trying to go and do a Boolean comparison here, and then it will, if it finds the character anywhere inside the string, it'll say true or else it'll say false. So let's see what it does. So it says false and it does it right? So we can do it with another character. Let's say I. Now it is true, right? We have lots of I's in here. So also this actually differentiates between the capital letters and the small letters. So if I, instead of small I, if I have capital I, it'll give you a false, right? So it's also doing a character, whether it's a capital letter or a small letter in comparison in this particular string. So very, very powerful. And you can already, I hope you guys are already seeing some, value out of all of these things. So, all right. So now another, operation that we'll do with string. So we'll try to change the string inside the test variable to uppercase. We know we have assigned this all to a lowercase. We right now want to convert all of this into uppercase. So test, which is a string, we can use a dot after this. So remember, we did the same kind of a concept in math. Math was a like library that we imported. So we said math dot, and it showed us what all are available inside that particular library. So test, which is a string, and Python has its native functions inside it. So you see, it already would show you what are the kind of operations that you can do. So in here, we have an operation called is upper, which actually is checking whether it's in the uppercase or lowercase. And there should be another one called just upper. So if we do test dot upper and we just put a open parenthesis and close parenthesis in here and run this code, we would get the entire string that we had test in the uppercase. You could have done it differently as well. So you could have said just upper and put in a test. I think this might actually give us an error. Yes. So why did it give an error? Because we didn't put the type of the variable. So this is another way you could do it, right? So there is a indexing, slicing, and grabbing subsections of this string section. Michael, do you want to walk through that part, or do we keep it for tomorrow, maybe?
We can keep it for tomorrow. And
Okay.
maybe some of these things. Why is this important? Like the test that upper. It's easy because you have IT experience is just how many how many character in the string. Assuming you have a lengthy word that you want to convert to uppercase, right? This is where you can use the power of Python to be able to do all this automatically instead of trying to do it manually, right? So that's where the power of the coding comes in.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So let's move on now. So let's say you have this string called test, which has IT experience. Now you want to extract the character at a particular position. How do we do that? So we have this string, and let me use the print statement so that we get multiple outputs. So let's say we want to take out the character which is at the third location, right? So here is a concept which you guys should remember, and this is universal in Python. So the character indexing starts from the number 0. So if you want the third character, you would actually have to type in 2. Okay, so this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. This is the third index, is actually indexed as number 2 in here. So what it does is it actually gives you the character that's at that particular position, right? Now you can also do it for not just one character, but let's say we want to get all the characters from the third till the fifth. Okay, so we'll use, so third would be the second index and fifth would be the fourth. So we'll use what is called the colon. So what colon does is it's essentially giving you the index 2 to 4 with the increment of 1, right? So, and you could do it for till the end as well. So let's see what this gives us. So it's giving us what you have in the second or third and the fourth one. So yeah, so actually so right now I realized that what I said was a little bit different than what I actually wanted to do. So I wanted to extract the characters at the third, fourth, and fifth level, right? So it's actually, so this particular operation is giving us n-1. So we would actually have to go till 5. Okay, so that will give us E, X, and P. And again, these are things that maybe you won't remember, but you should get the high level idea that the indexing starts from 0. This colon operator helps you to go from one particular number to another particular number, and the last one actually is the n-1 that's returned out of this. All right. So now what we could do is we could actually do some operations with this indexing, slicing, and dicing. So this is where we are getting a little bit fancy as well. So operations with strings. So what we will do is we'll actually create a new word out of out of this IT experience. So instead of doing IT experience, so let's extract the first two letters IT, and let's extract the PER, these three letters, right? So how do we do extract IT? We would do test 0 to 3, right? So that should give us IT. Oh, sorry, 0 to 2. Why am I missing this? Yeah, sorry, my bad. So 0 to 2. And then we also want to extract the EX and P. So we will do 3, 2, 4, 5, 6, I think. No, what happened? So that's from 2 to 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So yeah, so let me actually move this to a new cell so that you guys don't get confused. All right. So I'm extracting from IT experience, I'm extracting I and T in a separate one, and I would extract EX and P in a separate one. So this particular line extracts I and T, and this particular line extracts EX and P. So you can see it has done these two. And now we can actually combine them together. So test combined, which is a new variable. We can actually combine IT, which is our first part in here, and we can use a plus operator. So we are doing almost like a math. So we're going to combine both of this, and this is what we use to combine them. And now we can use the print statement, and we can say what is test combined. And you would see that it has combined the IT and EXP here. All right. So I will actually show you a very fancy use of everything that we learned till now. So this is a combination of strings.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
So if indexing starts from 0, so if you are printing from 0 and 0 to 2, then that's what the amount expectation shouldn't be IT, it should be I and E, you know?
No, so great question. So let me actually try to illustrate this. So what this thing does is colon is essentially it's taking the first and the last number that you're giving in here and incrementing it by 1. So the output of 0 to 2 is actually 0, 1, and 2.
0 and 1.
0 and 1. That's right. Yeah, my bad. So it doesn't allow me to do this without a NumPy, but yes. So essentially, to answer your question, when you put this 0 colon 2, it's actually indexing 0 and 1. When you're doing 2 to 5, it's indexing 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, I think the case that it includes the first position, so 2, then it excludes the last position. So if you put 2 column 5, it will give you from 2, 3, 4, and it will exclude 5. So the last number there will be excluded. The first one will be included.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. No, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah. As I always start getting confused in this indexing, and yeah, and as you use, more libraries and stuff like that, you would kind of understand where I was getting the confusion at. But yeah, no, thank you, Michael, for explaining that. I think that actually explains. The first one is included and the last one is actually excluded. Yep. All right, so I'll go on with the combination of strings and numbers, right? And we will do concatenation as well, concatenation of different strings. Right, so, all right, so what we will do is we will define a string which will say this is a test for day 1 of, we will use a plus, remember, so this is where we had the plus, we were combining, concatenating strings together. We will say test dot upper So remember, dot upper actually returns the uppercase of the variable, of the string variable. We will combine it more with another part where we'll say where we learned some basic sum operation, right? So these are all strings, right? And then we will say between two numbers, right? So this is again a string, and then remember in our print statement we could actually, you know, add the numbers, and we had the variables that define the number. So we had the variable as input 1. So two numbers with input 1 equal to, and then we will use another plus, and input 1, remember, was actually an integer, right? So our type was integer. So in order to concatenate the numbers as a string, so we'll have to say that, you know, the input 1 is actually a string. So we'll use the statement called str, which converts this input 1, which was a number, into a string, right? And that will help us combine it in this concatenation. And then we can say plus, and then we say and plus input 2, which is equal to another plus and a string which says input 2, right? So these are the two numbers that we added on, and then we can say plus, which gives plus. Remember, we had a result variable that was storing the output, so we'll say that that's also a string. So let's try to execute. So this is a huge string, but you can see that it actually combined a lot of this stuff. So it was a concatenation of multiple strings. Also, we converted the numbers into string using this str by defining the number as a string, and then we concatenated all of them together. So you can see that the output of this is a test for day 1 of IT experience, where we learned some basic sum operation between two numbers, input 1, which is equal to 4. So 4 was stored inside this input 1, which was converted into a string, and input 2, which is equal to 3, which gives 7, right? So this is a great way of concatenating different strings and converting the strings numbers into strings. So this might be a good point where I would take a pause and ask if anybody has some burning questions, or else we will move on with our if and else statements. Yes. So I have a comment where it says may help to break long lines of code up into multiple lines. So a question for anybody in the participants: how do you break a line into multiple lines? Anybody? Somebody should know. We have some. So somebody answered /and, somebody answered 3 dots. So let's try it. Okay. So 3 dots doesn't work. Let's see. /n doesn't work. Somebody said 3 single quotation mark. Doesn't work. Somebody said new line character. So that's basically this guy, right? So that is exactly the correct answer. So this particular character, and I'll put a comment in here, this is a new line character. It helps you to, move your lines into different, like, separate lines. So somebody said with pluses on either side. Let's try that as well. Yeah. So this is interesting because we have a plus in here as well. So let me actually move it in here and let me break it right at some other place. So that's actually, I'm not sure if the pluses would work with this kind of a case, right? We already have a plus in here, but yeah, let's try. Yeah. So plus on this side and you're saying plus on the other side, right? So no, it doesn't work. So the only way you can separate the the codes into different line is using this new line character. Right? So you put this in here, and that's where it works. Yeah. So does it matter where you put this? Let's test it, right? So let's put it inside the string, right? It doesn't. So yeah. So this is interesting because I would expect this to be considered as a string, but it didn't. So every day I learn something new about Python. So you see, it didn't actually pick up that character inside there. So now the other question that immediately comes to my mind is, how do you actually, what if you want this to be inside your string, right? So how do you do that? And I'm sure Stack Overflow has an answer to that as well. All right. Okay, I see a lot of active participation. Yeah, you guys are helping each other. Good to see that. So I think we are in a good shape to move forward with the if and else statements, right? Michael?
Yeah, okay, let's move on in the interest of time.
Yep. All right, so let's look at if and else statements. So if and else statements are basically used to compare different conditions and then do certain operation if a particular condition is met, or do another operation if your condition is not met, right? So that's the classic use of if and else statement. All right. So one thing to remember here is that, and I will tell you explicitly what this means, but you should remember something about the white spaces in Python. Remember white spaces in Python. Let me put a note. This is for myself. I have to show you guys what this is. And another thing is that, remember the pattern of the if statement, of if else statements, right? And you will, if you Google this, you would find all the patterns. I mean, if you tend to forget, that's not something that would be very difficult to find in Google. So you can just type in if else statements for Python and you'll get the pattern if you've forgotten it, right? So let's try to do something. So we'll try to write a code where we will check if the sum of two numbers is divisible by 10. Yeah, reasonable enough problem to solve. So check if sum of two numbers is divisible by 10. Okay. So let's see, we had input 1 and input 2. Now let's put input 3. Let's say that's 10. And then we have input 4, which is 20. We know that the sum should be divisible by 10, right? In this case, the sum is actually 30. So we will say input 3 plus input 4, right? So something to remember here, I'll introduce an operator called modulo operator. Okay, so modulo operator is essentially the percentage sign, right? And what it does is it's essentially giving you the remainder when you do a division, right? So we will use this modulo operator. So we'll say that if the sum of the inputs and I'll use the modulo operator, which says that divided by 10 and the remainder of it, if that's equal to 0, and then I'll use the colon. So this is the formatting that I was talking about. So you see what the formatting was. So I said if I had a space in between the condition, so this is my condition, and then I have the colon at the end of my condition, right? Then this is the white space that I was talking about. So see, now the next line automatically moves a little bit on the side. This is almost like a tab, right? So it's very important. If you do not have that white space, then you would get errors, right? So we can say that if this condition is met, then we will say divisible, right? And then we know that this particular if part of the statement is done, so we can go into the original indexing for this particular line, and we can say else, and then we do not have any condition for that. For any other case, you just say it's not divisible, right? So remember a couple of things here. One is the formatting. If a particular condition, do not forget the colon at the end of it. Then it'll go into the next line with some white space in here, right? That white space is important. Then we can say what we need to do. So in this case, we are printing and saying that it is divisible. Else, which is going back to the original indentation, and then we'll use the colon, and then we can use another statement in here with a white space and say that print this is not divisible. Let's see what it does. So it gave us what we are expecting it to give us. So, and now we can change the input. We can say, all right, what if it's 11 and 20? Now it's not divisible by 10 anymore, right? So we could do something more as well. We could check whether it's not just 10, but it's also divisible by 5, right? So we can check if the two numbers are divisible by 10 or it is divisible by 5. So let's see. So in that case, we'll have two conditions, right? So we'll use the similar part of the code in here. We will say if some inputs is divisible by 10, then print divisible by 10. Now we'll do something else. We'll say else if, and that is the syntax for that is ELIF, elif. We'll say some inputs is divisible by 5. Then we will print divisible by 5, right? Or else not divisible by 10 or 5. Okay, and just to make this clear, I'll move this into a separate cell. Okay, let me run this cell. So remember our inputs were 11 and 20. Let me actually bring this again, copy this over here so that we have everything in the same cell. So 11 and 20, it's not divisible by either. Let's go back to 10 and 20. So remember here, so what happened was, what happens in this kind of a conditional statement is that it goes into the condition. Once it is satisfied, it doesn't look at the others, right? So it is going in a hierarchical way, right? So it found out that the sum of the inputs is divisible by 10. So although it is divisible by 5, but still it didn't go into this particular loop. So it gave us divisible by 10. Now you could ask me that, can you do this all together? Yes, you can. And you can do that using AND statements, but in the interest of time, I'm skipping that. So let's try a divisible by 5 and not divisible by 10. So yeah, you can see now it didn't satisfy this particular condition. It went into this, satisfied this, and then it printed it out. All right, so at this point, I'll introduce you to another type of variable which is very, very specific to Python, and it's called, list. list of of stuffs. So let's say we write this as a heading, another data type, which is called lists. And in this case, I will say names. So names underscore, let's say string. So we'll do this. So let's say we have 3 names of brands: Mercedes, BMW, and Toyota, right? So these are 3 names of brands of car. Okay, so this is a string. We know this is a string, right? Now what if we want to split this into 3 different, 3 different parts, right? So we want Mercedes, we want BMW, we want Toyota. So way to do this, so let's save that in the variable called names. We will say, either we could say names dot string and then dot split, or we could just put this thing again, right? And we say dot split. What it does is it essentially splits this particular string into 3 particular parts, right, based on the white space in between. Right. And the output of this, which is the interesting part, is this particular thing. So it has, you can see 3 different strings, but if you use the type of this particular variable, you will see that you will get what is called a list, right? So this is specific to Python, and it's a very powerful thing. So lists in Python can store a combination of strings and numbers, and you can have list inside list. So this is essentially an array of strings, but in Python it is named as list, right? So and why it is called list is because you can not just store strings in it, you can also store numbers as well, and also nested lists. So let me actually show you an example of a nested list, right? So let me insert a new code. Nested list. Okay, let's just name it stuff. And here you will see I'll have, like, let's say, numbers 1. This was integer, a floating point, string, also another list. So list always has this, but the third brackets open. So that actually tells you that that's a list. So you can have more numbers in there. And so now what you'll get out of this is essentially a nested list. So it has strings, it has numbers, it has floating point, and it also has a list inside it, right? So, and you can add things inside the list. So lists are very, very powerful. So you should start using them. If you, this is very specific to Python now. So you can append things inside the list. So let's say we had 3.1 name and this. So let's say we want to append another number to this. Let's say 0.5, right? And let's see what it outputs. You can now see that, we previously had this list, and now we appended another floating point number in here. You could use also what is called a pop operation. So pop, what it does, it essentially takes the particular index that you mention in the list. So essentially what list, so if you have to get a particular character out of the list, you can use, let's say, something like this, right? So stuff 0 is the first number, stuff 1 would be 3.1, and stuff like that. Now there is another operation where you could actually take a particular index out of the list. So it is called popping it out, and it no longer exists in the list after that. So let's see. So let's say we want to take out 3.1 from this particular list. So what we will do is we'll say stuff dot pop, and we'll say 1. Okay, and then we will see what is inside stuff now. So what it did was, if we had stored it in a variable, you could have accessed that. So I should have done that possibly. So let me start here. So this was our stuff. We added 0.5, right? So now let's take this off. We are just popping something out of this. So we are popping 3.1. So let's see. So that's 3.1. So the output of this is actually 3.1. And what it did was, as a result, is essentially it took that out of this particular list. So very, very useful, actually. You know, some of the ways we do it. So for example, if you're scanning through an Excel spreadsheet and you want to, you know, do some operations and create a list which has one less column or one less row, then you use the pop to actually get that particular row or column, right? So yeah, so some out of the many operations that you can do with lists. All right, now I'll move into another very important aspect of programming, which is the for loops, right? So what it does, it essentially, if you want to loop through certain thing, you use the for statement. So it essentially reads something like this: for something in something, you would use a for loop, right? So let's say let me demonstrate this through a case. So let's say we have some numbers, right? So let's say we have 0.01, 0.1, 0.5, 0.8, 3.1, and whatnot, right? So quick question here. I hope you guys remember. It is not a trick question, but I've opened the third parenthesis here. So the data type for this would be a list, right? So I mean, I'm not gonna open this up for you guys, but I hope you guys remember this, right? So okay, so this is a list with a series of numbers. So what we'll do is we'll try to find like something inside this whole nested list of things, right? So we will say for number in numbers, right? So that's the way we will we'll try to access each and every number out of this list of numbers, right? So that's how you do the loops, the for loop, right? So again, the syntax is important. It's almost similar to the if statement. So you have the if space like the for indexing out of it. So I see Silver is asking if we should check whether people are following.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep. Yeah.
So are we following? I think we're getting more into some more details. So we want to make sure that you guys are following.
So is there somebody who is not following? Yes. We have lots of yes in here.
A lot of yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's good. And we'll have tomorrow as well to cover any of this stuff that you are behind on. We'll send the course videos, the course materials, but we're still going to be available to help guide some of those people that are not following. But it looks like majority are following.
Good. Awesome. So all right, so now we are trying to do the loop. So we'll try to get access to each number in this numbers list using this for statement. So for number, and you could say this can be anything, right? This is yours, so user defined, right? So you define this variable name for. So I just chose that, for number in this numbers list, right? So we'll try to do some operation. Let's say again white space in here, like the if statement. We use the print and we say, like, let's say we just want to print the value. The value is this particular number, right? Let's see what's the output of this is. So what it did was it went through each and every, like, a number in this numbers list, and it executed this particular statement. So instead of, so you could have easily written this for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate numbers, But using the for loop, you could, just save. This is what we call efficient programming, right? So you would, you just needed 2 lines of code, and you could do, print all the, numbers inside this numbers list, right? So that's how we do for the, yeah, the for statement. All right, so I think in the last 15 minutes, I would like to introduce something more so that, you guys have something like some of these concepts already grasped in, and tomorrow we can discuss about this if there is some sort of, doubts about certain things. So I'd introduce you to another type of data, which is called dictionaries. So it's again a Python specific term. So Python data type, which is a dictionary. Very, 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 very useful. It just made, Python super duper useful. Yes, so there is a question which says, is there a way to get the index of the number in the scenario, right? So we could. So one easy way to do that would be you just, open a separate variable called I, right? So you say, okay, we'll go inside the loop. We initialize that variable with I equal to 0. We say print index is I, right? So for the first one, it'll have the first value, and as you go through the loop, you can say I equal to I plus 1, right? What it'll do, it'll just go through the whole value. Right, and another good point, do we have exercises? We do have some exercises. I think Michael will be sending this out, right? So we'll have some exercises at the end of it, and you guys can try to address them, and we can, if you have any doubts, we can try to answer them tomorrow. All right. Okay, so let me quickly wrap up this last concept that I want you guys to have. So this is a dictionary concept, and dictionaries are something which is almost like a database, right? So you have a mapping of a key and a value pair, right? So this is how dictionaries work. So you have a key and you have the corresponding value for that, and you can retrieve the value based on that key. All right, so this might sound a little vague, so let me actually do an example dictionary, right? So this is the name of the variable that I'm trying. So dictionaries, remember, you'll always have to use the curly braces, the curly brackets to define a dictionary. And in this case, let me actually define a dictionary with some car names and some details about the car, right? So I'll have a string which is called car name. So that's the key, right? And the value for that, which I define with this colon operator. So this is the key and the colon, and then there will be the value. The value would be, in this case, let's say a Honda. Okay. So that's how you define a dictionary. So let me actually put a comment there. Key colon value. That's how you define. That is the way you define things in a dictionary. All right. Okay. And you can have multiple keys, right? So I can put a comma after this. Yes, that's right. So people who are using JavaScript, you guys know this. So this is just similar to the object that we define in the JavaScript. Yes. So, but let's not confuse. We have a lot of people of different level of programming. So, but yeah. So essentially, the message that I want to give to you guys is that in a dictionary you can have the key and the corresponding value. So I define the first key and its value in here. Now I'll define another key and its value, right? So I'll say, all right, the name of the car is Honda. Let's see the model. That's the key. And the value is Accord, let's say. Okay. Now I'll say another key is the year of manufacturing of that car. right? So that's the key. And this is actually a number. So let's say it's a 2020, right? And then let me also define the color of this car, right? The key would be the color. And let's say we say it's a black one, right? And finally, we also define another numeric one, which is a price. Let's say it's around 24,000, right? I don't know if this is even a real number, but possibly, uh, or maybe not. I don't know. So yeah, so once you have this, so you will have the dictionary. So you can see that you can define the key value pairs accordingly in the dictionary. All right, so we will run this in the code cell. Now let's see if we can retrieve these values. So how do we retrieve this? So let's say we first see what we have in example dictionary. So we have example dictionary with all these keys and values, right? So now you can use the third bracket and define the name of the key, right? So once you have that, it actually returns the value of it. So this is the big power of using a dictionary, right? So you can almost create a database, and based on the key values, so let's say you would have, like, you can create this dictionary for all the models of cars, let's say, for example, and you can have the same key name but different values of it, right? So based on the key name, you can actually um, get the values of it, and that actually adds a lot of power to this whole. You can also do this in another way, that's using the get operator. So you can use example dictionary dot get, right? And then you say the key name. The key name is car name, and this is Honda, right? All right. Now this get operator is also very useful, and it can be used in another way. So let's say we know our example dictionary doesn't have a key called mileage, right? So let's say if we try to get the value corresponding to, let's say we do not know, we have a huge database and we are not very sure what are the values inside this, but we think that we also have a mileage inside this dictionary. So let's say we try to use the get operator, right? So we use this. So this doesn't complain, but what it returns is essentially it returns none. So let me actually try to see if the print statement actually prints that. So you see, so this is like, the output of this. This is none. So, but this get object, you can actually define if it is not present in the dictionary, what value it should get, right? So you can actually define a value corresponding to this key using the get operator. Let's try and do that. So by default, it is none. So I'll use the same statement, example dictionary dot get mileage. So if it is there, it will return you the value. If it is not there, let's put a value of 2000 in there. Okay. So now it is returning a value of 2000. Right. So that's how the get operator. So there are different ways of doing this, but yeah, and we can play around with it tomorrow in our discussion. But you can also use this dictionary with the for statement. So this is possibly my last comment for today. So remember, we had the for number in numbers. So that was the list. You can use the similar thing in with dictionaries. So here you can use not just the value, but also the key. So for entry, comma, the value in example dictionary dot item. So remember the syntax of this. So the example dictionary dot items give you all the items in this, and the first entry will give you the key, and the second entry will give you the value corresponding to this, right? So, and remember, for our for statements, we have to end it with a colon for the first line, then it goes into the white space, and then we can use the print statement, and we can print the entry and the value. Right, so you see, so it has printed for every key and its corresponding value, right? All right, so I think I will leave it at this point. We did want to cover tuples, but I think that's another data type which is equally confusing and also useful in Python. So we can start off with tuples tomorrow morning, but not morning, rather in the afternoon. So yeah, so maybe we'll just stop here and see if there is any burning questions in the last 5 minutes from the audience. Okay, so there's a question about 2000, whether it's added to the dictionary. So I think I did mention that it gets added to the dictionary. So that's not the case. So thank you for pointing that out. So it's actually just printed out. So that's the output that gets from this. So yeah, no, good point. But there is a way to actually, add that as a key as well. So yep. Maybe that would be an interesting thing that you can use Stack Overflow to search. So yeah, so maybe we'll start off with that particular question. So how do you add? And I'd expect you guys to at least check Stack Overflow and see if you guys can find out a particular way of doing this. That would be a good practice exercise. Yeah, and we will be sending out all these materials. We have certain exercises in here for you guys. So give it a try. Maybe try to see if you guys can do this. And yeah, we will be happy to take in questions tomorrow.
Yeah, Vishal, maybe we can look at the first 3 questions with them, then we
Yep.
can send out the rest of the question. So let's look at number 1. Then when you guys look at it, then you type your answer in the chat box. Let's see if everybody got some of the concept that we've presented.
Right.
So number
Yeah.
1 is, which of these is a floating point? Okay.
Wow, good.
Good.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
a
have
lot of
only
good. All right, second one. So for anybody that didn't follow it, you can just go to the window and use the type, right? The type command to be able to know each of this stuff. So the
wow.
third one, let's look at number 3. It's a little tricky. Okay. Somebody said D for number 3. So Vishal, can you go to the collab and see and show why that D is not the correct answer for a string?
Right. Yep. Good one. Let's try and do this. Okay. So let's say we have type and then we say Sam.
It's not defined. So to make it a string, we just need to put like the columns, right? So go for it, Vishal. Yep. And now it's a string. So Sam is not a string in that example. Instead, the 12.5, because it's in that, yeah. So let's try 12.5.
Sorry, my bad. Let's try 12.5 and I'll go back to the questions.
Yeah. If you, yeah. So now it's a string.
All right. How do I get out of this? Yes.
So we won't go through the rest of them. We would send these questions out. We want participants to complete all of them and get it ready for tomorrow's discussion. So there are just a handful of questions. Then we have a project at the end. So we'll send the videos, we'll send the materials, and Google is also your friend, as you try to walk through the project. Then tomorrow we'll come and discuss some of this concept again, make sure that everybody, is able to complete the project for week 1. Yes, we are going to share the collab notes. I can see some questions. We'll share the notes, we'll share the videos, we'll share the code that has been described today.
Then we'll send instructions on how to submit your, is it homework or assignment now?
Yes, we'll send instructions on how to submit.
How to submit, yes. We'll set it up.
Okay. So I think this brings us to the end of today. I hope you guys had fun. I hope we learned a lot. Thanks a lot. If you think you enjoyed it, maybe we want to see a thumbs up or something.
Yes.
I really had fun.
Virtual clap for Vishal and Michael.
Thanks, Vishal. That was great. Well delivered.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Like the participation amongst the crowd as well. So that
Very energetic crowd.
Very
Thank
energetic.
you very much,
Thank
guys.
you. Yeah.
Yep. All right, we'll send all the information in the group, and you guys will get more the videos, the collab notebooks, everything, as well as the project. Try to work on the exercise and the project, because that's how you can reinforce the learning, right? So when we show this, it looks straightforward, but when you try to play with it, then you can struggle a little bit. Go to Google, don't give up. Just Google it and you'll be able to walk through this and you continue to improve. Because next week, we're going to go into even more deeper and more advanced stuff. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.